Hello, and welcome to the Some Kind of Mystic podcast, where we dive deep into the mystical, the spiritual, and the raw, unpredictable journey of being fully human. I'm your host, Jessie Herman, a life coach, energy healer, mother, and channel for the non-physical entity group, Vagrian. In this show, we explore what it means to live with purpose, wonder, and an open heart. So if you've ever felt like you're walking your own unique path or seeking your own unique truth, know that you are some kind of mystic too. Today's guest on the Some Kind of Mystic podcast is my dear friend Kori Tolbert. Kori was born into this world with cystic fibrosis, and her quest to understand wellness, the workings of the cosmos, and life began as a small child. As someone who was aware from a young age that our lives in these bodies are limited, Kori does not waste a day or miss a chance to leave a love print in the world. Her work with others has focused on helping individuals find more freedom of movement and ease in their lives through one-on-one bodywork, somatic sessions, patient empowerment programs, classes, workshops, and retreats. She has studied with teachers throughout the United States, Japan, and India, but most importantly, does what it takes to find her own deep well of wisdom each day and encourages others to find theirs. I am certain you're going to absolutely adore this episode of the Some Kind of Mystic podcast, where we learn with Kori Tolbert how to allow the wow of life. Enjoy. Welcome, Kori, to the Some Kind of Mystic podcast. I'm so excited to have you here after so many months, maybe even a year of us trying to arrange to meet. So welcome. Oh, this is thrilling. I'm so excited.
Thank you so much for having me, Jessie. I'm super excited to be with you today.
I'm also so thrilled that we get to do this after we met in real life, because we've been friends for like 7 or 8 years or something like that over the magic of the internet. And it really is a completely different experience to get to hang out with you, get to see where you live, get to meet your partner, your dog, have, share a meal. We just had such a wonderful time. I'm so glad I got to see you in Denver and that you got to come to Boulder and hang out for some of those events. So that's so awesome.
Yeah, so great. So great. And yeah, you're right. After being together in person, there's that sort of collects some of the wholeness of the character of us.
Exactly. It's perfect. Yeah, we've created the third entity finally, the one that the melding of the energies. Exactly. Cool. Yeah. So you've seen quite a few episodes of the Some Kind of Mystic podcast. You've been following it since the beginning. I know, because I see you commenting sometimes. And thank you so much for that. I love when people comment on this because they let us know what they are wanting to see more of. And you know that the majority of the Some Kind of Mystic podcast is not really focused on the actual spirituality aspects of spiritual people, but more on how did they get from where they were to where they are now, and what has this life's journey brought them. Now, your story starts when you're extremely, extremely, extremely young, and your spiritual journey has basically been since, I believe, before birth even. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. So first of all, yes, thank you so much for what you're offering out into the world and inviting other people to share into. It's been really a joy to see the Some Kind of Mystic podcast and all that you've had on there so far. So I'm excited to be here too now. And yes, you're exactly right. So I was actually born with cystic fibrosis. I was diagnosed when I was 2 months old, and essentially it's a genetic disease. And without going into too many of the details of that, my mother was basically told at that point when I was diagnosed that I was not expected at that point to live into or out of childhood, certainly not into adulthood. So for me, yes, that was a part of my life, or this exposure, this possibility of maybe death being close was never something that I didn't know, I guess you would say. It's not like my mom or my family, my dads. I have my biological dad and my mom were split by the time I was 1, divorced. And then I had another father as well growing up. So I had a bit of a complicated family, lots of catalysts very early, lots of layers there. But my family, they didn't really emphasize the disease or the fact that I could be dying. And really, my mom didn't really talk about the possibility of a miracle or change when I was young and growing up, and said, if I couldn't do things or things were hard or times in and out of the hospital, she set me up to kind of meet things from her way, from her sense of strength and perspective, which was saying, Kori, life's not fair. It is what it is, essentially. So that was challenging, but I also see how it encouraged me into my own strength and to just go for it with everything that I could, no matter if my life expectancy was short or long or anywhere in between. But I have this sense of, I think as long as I can remember, I also have felt this sense of, and there's something more. This isn't the whole picture of whatever I'm being presented, whether it's through the doctors or what I was being told in school or what I was seeing in my family. It's like, there's something more. And when I was, I don't know how old I was when my grandmother started doing this with me, which is interesting because my grandmother maybe was not such what you might think of as a spiritual person, although she had those connections and she had something because she started doing something with me that she called the white light. And I actually lived with my grandparents for a while. My mom and I lived with my grandparents when my parents split up. I think this was sometime after my mom and my stepdad got together because I was spending the night at their house, and I used to love to spend the night at my grandparents' house. And my grandma would before bed, she would take me into this visualization and she would walk me back. We would count backwards and she would bring me to this beautiful scene where there was a beach and the imagery. She would talk about the sunlight on the water and the warmth of the sun. And I could see any of our, the animals who had passed away. The dogs would be running on the beach, and she would bring my mom and my dad and different people to be on the beach so that I actually could land there visually and see and feel. And she would encourage me to feel this amazing, healing, gold and white light. And even as I remember now as an adult in my 40s, which is miraculous, let's just say, I can still feel the healing energy of that visualization, that invitation, that meditation. And so that's something that I've carried with me, that I could access that at other points in my life. And it's really been, I think that was maybe one of my beginning tastes or possibilities into that I could actually bring myself into this experience of felt healing, goodness, connection, source. And then she would say, okay, mommy's calling now, it's time to go. For my mom, she would say, can you hear her voice, and bring me back and count back up into landing into this reality. Wow. And I used to say, Grandma, let's do the white light, when we were young. So yeah, that was the first taste. And then I would, as a child and growing up into my teens and into adulthood, I spent a lot of time in and out of the hospital. I made many friends who had CF. We call it cystic fibrosis. We call it CF for short. And we would room together at points back when that was allowed. It's a whole nother story why that's not allowed anymore. Now they know we can make each other sick. Whole nother story, but witnessed the lives of these other beautiful beings and my own life in and out, and saw how the hospitalizations, all those things, they were incredibly hard, but there also was such love and a willingness to try, some joy in those times. And so witnessing this, sort of being in the what you might call regular world of school and all the things that happen as you're growing up, but also having a part of me that, again, was in and out of the hospital, that was working so hard to live. All the treatments at that point were basically to help me not die. It wasn't ever really to cure at that point or thrive. It was just, how can we keep this body alive and going? So a lot of perseverance for that, a lot of dedication, commitment, but also with this access to magic. And, one of my closest friends who had CF, my best friend, Jeff Moore, he passed away when he was 13 and I was 12. And there would be many, many other friends that I would say goodbye to in physical form. But it was this first time of knowing and seeing and loving someone with CF as a child, and being in witness of them losing their physical form and transitioning, something in me, something in my heart. I mean, yes, there was some fear. Oh my goodness, this is the same thing I have. What's happening? All the questions you might expect a 12-year-old to have. But there was also something that broke open in me, in my heart, that allowed access to start to feel into even more of the what else, to come back into the what else. And in, high school, I started reading things like Conversations with God, Celestine Prophecy, Way of the Peaceful Warrior. I mean, all of that stuff. I mean, this was well before The Secret came out and all the things around intention, but it was about, I was so curious about co-creating and what was possible. And really, by the time I was 18, I made a commitment to take my healthcare into my own hands, which scared my mom, a lot of my care providers, because some of what I was doing was very different nutritionally. I was thinking about what I was putting in my body diet-wise, using that as medicine. But I also was thinking about, how can I have emotional, spiritual well-being, and how can I take responsibility for myself in those realms as well? So that's when I started to come into more of some of the work around intention and really powerful co-creation and all of those pieces. And then, The Secret was coming online, and I would be in the hospital and I would write on my body with makeup pencil, love and goodness and gratitude. I write on the hang bottles of IV bags, the med machine, and the nurses came to understand that's what I would do. And some tolerated, some encouraged, but it just kind of blossomed from there. Yeah, there's actually more, but I wonder if should I take a breath and pause?
I'm wondering, because you're talking about, a lot of techniques that some people can tend to get themselves into a bit of trouble with at times, in terms of you did mention The Secret a couple times, and law of attraction, manifestation, intention setting, etc. And I know from my own personal experience in that, when I really got into Abraham Hicks, and I was listening all the time and trying really, really hard to be positive, and I was hanging out at that, high vibrational frequency, and was nailing it, and then had a very heavy life experience. I had a miscarriage at the time, and I could not for the life of me figure out why. Right? There was this huge question: what did I do wrong? How come I didn't figure it out? How come, I asked for this? If all this is, you get what you ask for, then how do these heavy life situations, and you've been there in so many of these heavy life situations, how do you come to a space where you're not beating yourself up while also understanding the value and the absolute magic of those teachings and of that sort of lineage of thought? Where's the mix between the, okay, yes, I create my reality, and also my reality is complete mess right now? You've been there. So I'd love to hear what your take is on that.
Yes. So Jesse, as you're talking, I just have to tell you, I have goosebumps because I feel like this is such an essential, such an important conversation. So yes, I kind of left as much as I could. I couldn't entirely, because I needed Western medicine to survive, but I really left a lot of faith and trust that I had there, and my pendulum really swung the other way in terms of total self-responsibility. And in this place, yes, there were amazing gifts, and I made powerful choices, and I was able to transform mindset. I was able to transform relationship to my medication and treatments and different things. And it also, when I was literally doing everything I could to survive, and still being faced with many rounds of new diagnosis, further complications in my lungs, to the point where, 3 different times I've been through a treatment you don't want to do to a body once, and I've had it 3 times. It's part of the reason why I moved across the country for the experts in the country, because stuff kept coming back. And yes, I too had some of that place, which became maybe some self-flogging in terms of how can I not think myself well? How can I not think myself, create myself out of having cystic fibrosis or out of this downward spiral that I was feeling and that was being shown on my decline of my lung function and all the tangible tests. And in reflection, now, and I'll talk a little bit about that shift too, but in reflection now, one of the things I can see is that it was harder to see, and one of the things I missed was that I already was a miracle. The fact that I was even continuing to live, breathe, have this engagement, it was already done. The miracle of it was already done. And I've had moments in the hospital bed where I was so clear that this is what I'm doing here right now. This is a part of my beauty. This is a part of my medicine in the world. This is the way I learn. This is the way I teach. I mean, I've had so many teaching opportunities again from a hospital bed or that paradigm to introduce the possibility of something else or something with. And I've really come to a place where, well, two things. One is that what I believe is that the co-creating piece is so much bigger than what my mind might perceive of, or what my mind on its own, my human brain and mind can do. Yes, it's a powerful tool. Absolutely. And that piece that is the God or the love or the life force energy in its purity is not contained by what the mind thinks is possible. And so my experience is what I'm actually co-creating from is that. Exactly. So that the essence that is running through me, as me, for me, and whether there's things, yes, do I want to clean my mind up and do I want to be conscious and do I want to raise my vibration? Absolutely. And I also want to trust in that which is here before the incarnation and through the incarnation of what might be possible in this body. And maybe that's my most beautiful, essential gift. And I have experienced that sometimes in those really hard, kind of scary for this physical being times, that's where I also get a taste of the preciousness, the miraculous. Yeah. And so I think sometimes what gets lost when we get really stuck or maybe focused on the thinking ourselves into something, and then if it's not turning out the way we think it quote unquote should, then there might be an opportunity to know that we've put out that initiation and rest into some of the something greater that is moving us into the beauty that we are.
Yeah, I've come to understand that any of those sort of teachings that say raise your vibration, you'll get the best possible outcome. Like basically that's what's being shared, right? Like raise your vibration because you get access to more of you, basically is what it is. I've come to understand that those teachings, I no longer follow them because I want to get what I want. I follow them because I want to feel good now. Like there's no point in you going, oh, I'm going to raise my vibration so that I can heal this problem, or so I can fix this crisis, or so I can change this experience. No, I'm going to raise my vibration because it's this now moment and that recognition of the miracle that is the beauty of being alive. And when you were talking the miracle, I was like getting tears behind my eyes because I'm thinking, she's talking about herself, and that absolutely is a miracle. But I want people who are listening to also understand that if you can just grab onto that sensation, even just for a second, and just sense into this body and sense into the fact that you've been here, and every day, as long as you've been aware of, you've been here. We all have access to that. Like, why didn't I get hit by a bus? Why did, that babysitter grab me in that moment when I was falling off the balcony? Like, maybe you haven't had these grand experiences in your life where you've been that close to the edge, but we really are fragile beings ultimately that are here and continue to be here for as long as that, what you were talking about, that energy behind you wants you to be having this experience in whatever way that unfolds.
Yes. Yes, yes. And even for any person, any being
Yeah.
actually that's alive right now, I mean, the odds of that
So weird.
happening scientifically are crazy, crazy, crazy odds against that. And the fact is that somehow it happened. You were born, you incarnated somehow each day. Each day is really a miracle. And yeah, I've had some magnifying glass around that. That's been some of my gift. But it's true for every single one of us, every
Yeah.
single one of us. And one of the pieces too that has helped me, I think, and pieces that I help with clients as well, is the piece around recognizing that miracle, recognizing each miracle, having appreciation. I mean, every morning when I wake up, if I have a bowel movement, I say, "Yay, great job, body. You are doing an awesome job." And, maybe it's not that full on cheerlead in the morning, but sometimes it is.
Okay.
It's like, oh my gosh, you woke up. There's this, you're making it through a different antibiotic treatment, or
Mm.
it's like I showed up to say good morning to the kids this morning, maybe for someone else, but all these things that we do that sometimes I think we can take for granted.
Hmm.
Wow. I think to let ourselves have some of the wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
It,
Beautiful.
there's such good medicine in that. And why not?
Yeah. I love it. Why not wow?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why not wow now?
Why not wow now? We found the title of this episode.
Yeah. Yes, I
Awesome.
love it. I love
Yeah.
it.
So you
I
did
love it.
mention just in that little bit clients. What exactly do you do with clients? But first, also, how did you come to whatever it is you're offering in service? Because you think you've got, people might think like, oh, she has a lot on her plate, like that miracle for being alive. That's enough. People are like, okay,
Mhm.
she's covered, doesn't need to do anything else. But you have been living your life in service to others. So share a little bit about that for us.
Yes, thank you. So again, there wasn't the expectation that I would maybe live into the fullness of adulthood. Again, I do also think there's a part of me that always knew that I maybe would, and kept going as if,
Sure.
just kept, next step, next step. So I started with college, but really one of the pieces that touched me the most and helped me as maybe a teen, was I experienced my first massage. And I felt my nervous system just go, zhoo. And yeah, some restorative possibility there. And so I remembered that. And as I was coming into thinking about school, beyond school, the things I thought about is, oh, I wanted to be a nurse, or I wanted to be a pharmacist. I was going to find the next cure for not only what I have, but what everybody has, And again, the nurse, because I really experienced the nurses and helping in the hospital and things. But I came back to this experience I had with a massage therapist. And that was in the back of my being. And I was kind of getting a bit sicker again and thinking, what am I going to college for? So I got my associate's degree. And at that time, there was a local massage school that was opening. Actually, it was going to happen at the college, but they were taking too long for me. So I found another one that had just opened in the city. And I was like, you know what? I want to start my work. I don't want to wait until being crazy dead and know if I'm even going to live. Let's start now. And so I went to massage school I think I was 20, maybe 21-ish, 2021. And I was the youngest one in the massage school. People were coming back for second careers and things. But anyway, I graduated and started working one-on-one with clients that way. But then was called, this is another longer, really fun story, so maybe sometime, but called into Sedona. I went on a cross-country trip on my own because, again, I had this sort of zest or desire to experience as much of life as I could while I was still alive. And so took 2 different cross-country trips on my own by myself, as a young teen, and found myself at the John Barnes myofascial school. I think it was called Therapy on the Rocks. And I was like, oh, I'm not going there. It sounds like a bar, not happening. But then 3 different times on this trip, and one of which I started coughing up some blood, and I was really concerned and worried. And this place kept coming up, and I was like, okay, I'll try it. Well, when I walk in, there's this Maxfield Parrish painting. I love Maxfield Parrish. I feel like he's an artist of my soul. And I was just like, oh my gosh, am I in this place? And And I was. And so I, had an amazing session. The person that I worked with could tell the amount of surgeries I'd had and breathing tubes I'd had just from working with my fascia. And I thought, wow, this is something powerful. So within a year of that, I trained wherever I could around the country. When other, young adults were spending money on concerts and, drugs or whatever, I was spending it on learning how to work with the body and survive and share with others. And so anyway, became a myofascial therapist. I also studied shiatsu in the city and had a beautiful opportunity to train in Japan, which is another story, but sort of worked with all of these things to start doing one-on-one work with clients. And I was also using it on myself. One of the things the myofascial work taught me specifically is around how our fascia is the tissue that actually holds tissue memory and that wraps around every single aspect of our being. And I saw that when we can engage in some of those stuck places in our physical being and our fascia and bring it to a point of meeting and create a choice point, that the body actually has an ability to self-regulate. The body knows how to self-regulate, and sometimes it just needs some assistance, permission, some help meeting its own resistance to completing a process. So the MFR work, the myofascial work started, I came alive to this. I witnessed it in myself. I witnessed it with other clients. That led to the continuum work that I was doing, where it's sort of like an internal recognizing that I am this, I am planetary body, I am cosmic body, but it's more of an internal way of meeting those same kind of places that we're holding and finding freedom, resource, nourishing, self-regulation. And so all of these things that I was really doing to do the best I could in this particular body, I also was learning how I could help others do the best they could in their particular body and thrive and meet and be able to move and find freedom. So that's a sort of how I came into doing more of that work, both one-on-one, and I also am in a place where I teach Continuum. So again, I can share a little bit more about what that is if you'd like to know, but essentially I do work with classes, I do workshops, I do retreats, one-on-one. I do the work somatic exploratory sessions with people online over Zoom, but also in person, and do those retreats and things in person as well, and work one-on-one with people as well. So it's a accumulation of a lot of different aspects that I pull into really meeting a person where they're at, or meeting a group where they're at, and helping facilitate freedom, resourcing, possibility, finding the possibility. I'll just say one little thing about Continuum.
Yes, please.
Is that one of the things I love about Continuum is it's a way of sort of finding a back door into your system. So one of the things we use is sound, and we use a sound, nonverbal sounding. So it's a way of sort of slipping underneath the cultural veil of assumptions of what we think is possible. And even, for example, for this body, what I think is possible, and actually joining with the life force energy to meet what's here and take the brakes off to that expression. So it could be anything. I mean, you could discover anything once coming inside and meeting the movement that you are, the life force energy that you are.
I love everything you've shared, also because it's such a perfect example of the response I would give to people when they say, I'm so interested in so many different things and I can't narrow it down, therefore I can't do anything at all, and I'm stopped and I'm stuck and I'm paralyzed. Because it sounds like you just followed whatever felt good to you in each now moment, and then ended up with this entire banquet of offerings that you could give to people that, yeah, maybe to someone don't make sense. Well, how does that go with that? But that was what I was going to ask you next is, while you have all these different offerings, inside of you, there's one desired goal and outcome. And you did say it yourself, which was to offer an ability, a doorway, a pathway to someone's freedom, whatever that means for that person. And so I love that. I love that there is like actually this example of you going and figuring out and playing with all of the options and just seeing what felt good to you and coming up with your own flavor of what to then offer on to other people. That's just a really beautiful example in and of itself of what I would say, anyone who's interested in becoming a service to others being, who has some sort of dream and goal, but maybe they're interested in a million of the different topics and they're so fascinated by a million different things. They've taken all the courses and then they say, oh, I have to niche down. I have to find my market and my tribe and my target audience. You don't. Guys, you don't have to find it. It finds you, okay? So yeah, I love that you're like a living example of that.
Yes, thank you, Jessie. Thanks for seeing that in me. I think you're absolutely right. And, many times it was following that next thing that I'm passionate about. And sometimes it was just showing up to what's here in the moment. So one example of and how I got a little bit more into patient advocacy is I ended up being the president of the Cystic Fibrosis Family Connection. Again, another story, but it was, I saw a need in the community. I had something in me to offer to help. Did I have previous experience in patient advocacy? Yes, a whole lifetime of that through myself, but I didn't have any official degree or anything to bring to that. Mm-hmm. But what I brought to that was plentiful and helped that organization. I actually helped act as a bridge between patients and caregivers and medical staff and just helped revive that whole organization so that it could go, and then also got more training in patient advocacy. So it was really, the not waiting, the showing up, the doing what felt like it needed to be done. And sometimes, I wouldn't say it always these things felt pleasurable in the initiation, but there was an energy that was moving through me that said, okay, this is now.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I have continued to follow that and then have been able to look back and see the gift of what that was. Sometimes banging my head against the wall, but other times in great glory and celebration and appreciation of what was created. So, all a part of it.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And you're even talking about sort of things coming up for you and then sharing them on to other people. I mean, earlier you were sharing about how, you were drawing all over your bags and writing on yourself and stuff like that. And then you went ahead and invented your booster Jots, which is another project that is really amazing that you've been offering for how long now?
Yeah, so thank you. So booster Jots. So yes, that came directly out of that time period, me doing it for myself and then starting to share little bits in the hospital with other clients or parents, people who had CF would come to me and I was like, I have this piece and it really makes a difference. And so just talking about it in little ways. And then I decided to start the company and see who else I could reach in doing that. So that was, my goodness, I can't remember exactly when I started. I'll link I'll share the website.
Yeah.
But I was in my probably mid-20s, maybe I would say. And what I did is I created these packets that had labels in them, and they were blank labels. And it's a children's based company. It's a patient empowerment company for kids and their parents, essentially, but really it's an everybody company. And I've also used this concept with many adults. So the idea is that you have these blank labels, and I gave them markers and stickers and different things to create with. And that you would take a label and you would either invite the child in if the child is too young to do this on their own, or if they're older, they can initiate themselves. But you invite them into feeling, what is it that I actually want to receive from this treatment? So I actually also used to do this on my water bottles. Again, I think maybe that came from The Secret. When I was teaching at the massage school, which is again another story, but I would have all the students were writing on their water bottles and all the things. So it sort of came from that. And I saw that the IV bag was a hanging water bottle, essentially, right? So when it would say tobramycin, I would write on top of it love or love and gratitude or whatever it was. And so this company was about inviting kids to feel into what do you actually want? What's important to you? And then creating a label to represent that. They create the label, or they get the help of the adult to create the label too. And you put it on the bag. And so then they get to see the magic of, one example was dinosaur strength. So the child gets to see the magic of the dinosaur strength dripping from the bag down the IV pole into their body, and they get to feel that. There's, sunshine rays, fairy dust, and we would have all sorts of things. We even had a teen put balls because she wanted more courage on her IV bag.
Okay.
But it's really, again, I love these little back doors into empowerment.
Yeah.
And for me, it was a back door. So it might look like a very light, kind of fun thing, which it is, but it also is incredibly informative because it takes into account the patient's experience and it invites them into partnership. And a child, no matter how old they are, there's always some potential to partner with the magic inside them that you have no idea about unless you ask them or unless they show you.
For sure.
So it was really giving, maybe not giving, but naming the power that we all have inside ourselves and inviting that to actually be a part of the treatment. And I would say can be as significant as what you're choosing to put in the body is that partnership, our willingness.
Yeah.
What do I want? And how can I also be in the active or the act of receiving it? So receiving as a verb.
Absolutely. I know from my experience with chronic illness, which luckily is now sort of in remission, I had a really hard time with the medication. And it was a weird psychological thing. It wasn't because every time I took the medication, I felt like I was a sick person. And what you're talking about is taking away that sort of framing, only sick people have to take this many pills, this amount of time and stuff like that. And you're talking about giving back the power of going, no, actually what I'm giving myself is self-love. What I'm giving myself is relief from my symptoms. What I'm giving myself is more energy or, the ability to fight this thing or whatever it is. And it's really a very good reframe. And when it's proposed by someone externally, and especially to children, I think if you learn this early on, you also learn the skill of reframing. You learn the skill of reframing, which is the biggest skill, I think, for changing your life. Because if you can change your circumstances without touching a thing, which you can through the reframe, right? Then you are a magician. You've changed the world by changing nothing at all except how you see it, which is fascinating and so awesome.
Yes. And giving opportunity to the voicing of that, the creating of that.
Yeah.
I mean, so yes, the recognition and the power and the reframe and the way we can receive it. And also there's room for, not only is there room for, but it's essential for your creation in this. Yeah. And how do you want to do that? How do you want to name that?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, you've been saying that's another story. I do know people who are listening are, more sort of curious of hearing more about Continuum, because that is something that you've kind of like thrown out there as as a bit of bait a couple times, because it is so fascinating. And I'd love if you just explain that a little bit and how you came to that and how that's transformed your life completely.
Okay, great. So yes, Continuum, I keep saying yes, but I have such a big yes. So Continuum is a body of work formed by Emily Conrad in, I believe, the 1960s. She was a dancer and essentially was discovering some of this work in herself, coming from her own place of trauma and moving through that, witnessing. She would speak to, and I'm abbreviating this, but she would actually speak to, she spent some time in Haiti and how she saw the energy of the earth moving up through the dancers and their expression and their movement, and really came to understand, she would say, that movement is not something we do, it's something we are. And so with some of my history being in the myofascial work and understanding how our tissue can actually unwind and start to move us into breaking patterns or releasing from holding patterns, I had some of that familiarity and some of that experience in my own body, in different ways that I have unwound, and again, working with other clients and witnessing that. So I had some of that exposure coming into my curiosity around Continuum. I actually tried to take classes for about 2 years before I could get in there, and because of a whole series of events. But there was something called Jungle Gym, and I was like, wow, that sounds like freedom, movement, curiosity. And so tried to come into that. And then finally, the workshop that I could get into was called Breathable Body. And I was like, okay, that's right up my alley. So I was like, let's do it. And in my first experience in that class, it was Robert Littman who was teaching, and he showed a video of Emily Conrad's body moving and Susan Harper, who's another amazing teacher. She has taught me so much about receiving and connecting. But in witnessing the movement in their body, I felt like I finally saw or had a human model for what I always knew was possible, that I hadn't had a model for before in terms of the freedom in their movement and expression. And so from that moment, I was hooked and was like, okay, I need to learn more. And I, started doing classes every week. I would be in the practice, deepening into it myself for about 10 years before I actually began teaching it and sharing it with others and doing some sounding one-on-one with clients, because I really did it for myself. And through Continuum, again, it's a form of using sound and breath and attention to enter into our systems with curiosity and being able to sort of surrender what we think we know and actually meeting what's here. And so one of the avenues of doing that is through breath and sound. And in my work in Continuum, I was able to improve my lung capacity by doing it. One of the breaths called the lunar breath, I actually used in place of sedation when they were inserting a line from my arm into my heart. I mean, it was very useful to me in my life as a way to enter, be with, find nourishment, find freedom. So it's essentially the guide or teacher lays out a motif, which we call a dive, which is a way to go in the body and explore. And then we enter in as participants and using sound, using our attention to actually pay attention to what's happening in the body, paying attention, fostering, developing our sense of sensation so we can start to really understand. Understand isn't the right word because that makes it a bit heady, but be informed by the sensation, be informed by the movement, and then take the brakes off to whatever that is and let yourself be surprised. So it's definitely a little bit outside of the box in terms of the sounding that's used or made. I might be doing a oh or e or it could look a little odd, but for me, it really has become one of the ways I come to discover and know myself in each new moment without the restriction of assumption of what I am or what I could be, and to discover freshly. And it's taught me so much about taking baseline, which is how am I right now?
Right.
Something you could do in a grocery store, something you do in a doctor's office, something you might do before a meeting, and actually listening to the cues of your system. So your system doesn't have to go boom, boom, boom with a hard, this is here. It's so I can pay attention, and I help my clients and participants in Continuum to learn to pay attention to some of the subtleties. Really feel like some of those subtle layers is where the magic happens, if you will, in our information. But Continuum has become a way that I resource, I pray when I don't have the words, when I want to offer out the depth of my heart, but the words don't feel like they can do it. I sound. When I meet something that I can't understand or can't, quote unquote, fix or see an answer for, I sound into it. I sound into the brilliance that is the expression of this body being. And again, recognizing that it's this body, that I'm also planetary body, that I'm also a part of cosmic body. And it's a way of exploring in with curiosity and paying attention.
Wow. Well, I think that for sure somebody listening is going to be like, well, now I'm curious and I'm paying a ton of attention to that. That's brilliant. Where can people find you if they're interested in following up, in booking something with you, or in any of your future projects? What do you got coming up?
So there's a retreat that's happening probably right before this is airing in the beginning of
Mm.
December. But I have a retreat for young adults
Ooh.
it's a Shalom retreat. Oh my goodness, we didn't even talk about Shalom Retreat and Study Center, but that's another thing. It's in the Catskills, but it's essentially a retreat for young adults to help them meet what's inside. So that's happening in June of 2025, the end of June. Most of my offerings, I also will have some more in-depth continuum work. I'm just completing an online series right now, so there'll probably be another one starting in January. We'll be doing some neat things for the solstice. Coming up at the end of December, but anything can be found at either myfluidnature.com, which is my main site right now. If you're curious about the booster Jots concept and that idea on partner shipping and care, that's boosterjots.com. I'm a little less active in that right now, but always inspired to talk to somebody about that if they have curiosity about that as well. But I would say those are my two main sites, and I keep things pretty up to date, particularly with the My Fluid Nature site.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, we're definitely going to send everyone in your direction because this is just so awesome and there's so much going on. Like Kori said, she has not even touched the tip of the iceberg on everything that is going on with her. She didn't talk about Vans. She didn't talk about her dog. So there's a lot left in there. So I definitely recommend anyone who's interested in anything that's come up to get in touch because, again, you'll just answer any questions that people have about anything. It's beautiful.
Yes, I'd love to connect and just see what the next moment
Yes.
means and is. Yeah. So thank
Exactly.
you.
And now I'm feeling a little like, oh, why didn't I ask her for a massage when we were when we were together?
Yeah.
I'm so silly. Next time.
Yes. Well, we'll have another chance.
We will. Absolutely. We
Yeah.
will in March. I'm going to come back. We'll catch up then. So thank you so much for being on the show. This has been absolutely awesome. I've loved every minute of it, and it's not nearly long enough. But do you have anything that you would like to share with people? If you had one piece of advice for, let's say, the most, what would I say? The listener who's feeling the most like it's not going anywhere, it's stuck, the thing has happened, and they're not gonna, be able to get that freedom. What's that one piece of advice that maybe this moment can open them up for?
I think I would say it's important to, yes, acknowledge and honor that piece, that feeling of stuckness or that feeling of, I don't know, where there could be access to hope or so there is something important about acknowledging that, not just bypassing over that. And then also having the possibility of what else? So what else might be here that I'm not seeing? And so with that, I don't even think it's the most important thing that you feel into or that you have an answer to that, but there's something powerful about letting yourself ask the question and letting yourself have that in your awareness, in your field. What else? What else is here? And then be open to the noticing and be open to the noticing in the most unexpected way. Who knows how? I think the more we can let go of how an answer might show up or in what form a response might come, the more we have access to all the possibility that, yes, we can't see when we're feeling that sense of hopelessness, or I don't think I can have any access to freedom. And then the last piece I would just say is notice if you are here and if you are breathing, just breathing, doesn't have to be any particular way, can be any quality. If you are breathing, there is some exchange that's happening in you. And anytime there's exchange, there's change. So to let yourself receive the knowingness of that, and who knows what that possibility opens up to. But it's something that as long as we're breathing, there is some change, there is some possibility. There's the something else. And it could be the tiniest seed. And sometimes all it takes is that tiniest seed of a crack and the willingness to not know and let yourself discover.
It's so beautiful. And to allow the wow.
Yes, allow the wow. Oh, and you normally ask people what they think a mystic is, right?
Yes, I forgot to ask you, what's a mystic? My God.
So I remember that from some of the other sessions. So I actually, I think I thought about this way back when we just first thought about doing this together in this way, and then kind of forgot. And so I thought about it yesterday as I was driving. And I love this question. I love that you asked this question. And it was so fun to think about. So I was like, yeah, I actually want to answer. Um, so for me, I think it's someone who looks for, sees, works with, or connects with the sacred or the magic of life. Like it could be any of those things, whether you work with it, connect with it, look for, see. To me, it's something about that willingness to engage with the sacred, the magic of whatever it is that we are.
So beautiful. I love that one. And I almost forgot the name of my show. Thank you again, Kori, for being here. This has been such a pleasure. I love you so much. And I'm so happy to share this with everyone and to see you again soon.
Thank you so much, Jessie. Such a pleasure. This was a delight today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Some Kind of Mystic podcast. If you're hearing this message, you've listened all the way to the end of this episode. And for that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's people just like you that keep me motivated to bring you more and more enlightened content to the world. If you have any questions about the things we covered in the show or would like to follow my projects, please find me on www.jpherman.com. I answer all my messages, so don't hesitate to reach out. You can also find me on Instagram, and the details are in the show notes.
That I love to hula hoop and hoop dance, so really play into dance with my hoop. That's one of my delights in life for sure. And also volunteering at the animal shelter. That's something that people wouldn't know and has really become a passion, inspired by my soul dog Bonnie, who's now passed, but really, again, broke my heart open into this way of serving and being with four-legged community and world that I never would have imagined I'd be doing before. So
beautiful.